My story's been told a million ways over the last 17 years. In the press, in the early days, they called it pig pills because of the inspiration behind the formulation. In religious circles, it was called beauty for ashes. In support groups, they called it an alternative to despair. In my first self-published version of my book, it was called These Painted Wings. And now in this Harper Collins published version, it's called A Promise of Hope. Kids are pretty resilient creatures. When they're under a lot of stress, people can come up with some pretty incredible coping mechanisms. I grew up with a mother who suffered with bipolar disorder and a lot of rage, a lot of out-of-control moods, and sometimes even psychosis. And so my life had some very traumatic components to it, and added to my illness, it was a lot to overcome. Early on in my childhood, I developed a coping mechanism that I call my girl in the back brain. And I had other coping mechanisms too, including beating my own head or scratching my face, hiding in closets, doing a lot of things, raging. But in my greatest times of stress, I always deferred to my girl in the back brain. And I wrote about her in A Promise of Hope. So this is a story about true healing. It's about my girl in the back brain and my little boy Blue. My girl was my truest friend through hard times. She was a protection in my mind and a filter from trauma. My little boy Blue, my son James, was an unwitting passenger on my ride to wellness. Dana and I were 18 and 21 when we married. He was my great escape, but even in marriage I couldn't escape myself, and he didn't know that when he married me, my girl in the back brain would be coming along too. And it didn't take him long to figure it out. By 21, my mother and grandfather were dead from suicide, and I had several diagnoses, including postpartum depression, bipolar 1 with rapid cycles and schizophrenic tendencies, as well as possible multiple sclerosis. I would not survive this illness, and we all knew it. I drew a lot of self-portraits in the hospital. I was walking in this one on a loose tightrope, so close to falling into the deepest, darkest abyss. I wore a drug helmet so thick that there was no light that could get into me, and the hole in my chest gaped, exposing me to terrifying things. I was a good patient, though. I was obedient. I tried 13 medications in various combinations. I was trying so hard to be well, just to have a purpose, to be what God wanted me to be. But all I could be was sick. My girl told me to just hold on. I couldn't connect with my son James. I was distant and distracted, angry and demanding, and he was belligerent. He had tantrums and night terrors and terrible, terrible disobedience. My little boy Blue was diagnosed with oppositional defiance disorder and ADHD. And I knew it was all my fault. My girl knew it too, because I was the mom who screamed in Walmart. I was the woman having a fit in the bank line when it was too long, and swearing and driving around, giving the finger to other drivers on the freeway. I was unpredictable. I was unfit. I couldn't care for my son, and everyone knew it. When he started preschool and missed several days because I couldn't figure out when Wednesday was, many weeks in a row, another woman started taking him for me. What if they figured out all my secrets? My secrets were all exposed with my first long-term hospitalization. My girl in the back brain gave me comfort when everything was falling apart. There were new rules now. I was not allowed to be alone with my son anymore. My girl in the back brain and I were lonely. The music of life stopped dead. Heavy drugs silenced some of the voices and blurred my vision. I gave up driving. I gave up trying. In an outpatient therapy group, I glued tiny tiles on plywood and played with yarn and painted this train for my motherless boy. My body was a prison. I knew I would never be happy here. Every single clear thought was about suicide. Even my girl in the back brain was giving up on me. My husband Dana worked midnights, and he left his ring on my finger. One night, while in his parents' care, I went to bed, but I went manic instead of going to sleep. My girl betrayed me. She turned away for shame as I had a full psychotic break, all night dancing, ranting, flapping, brain cracking. Dana's ring was lost in the mania and the sound of running water and the crunch of an old wheat grinder. Dana had a choice to make. We drove through back roads and golden fields and stopped to tour Edmonton Hospital, a residential institution for long-term psychiatric care. A place for people like me, who will never be well. On our way home, I asked Dana if he had plans to kill me in the field. My girl and Dana cried about me. Then, in the fall of 1995, in a burst of inspiration, like blinding light through branches, my father had a conversation that began the end of my illness, and Empowerplus was conceived in a strange and unexpected answer to my father's desperate prayer. The infant, unrefined treatment was unreliable, and although I had no expectation for recovery, when the hole in my chest closed and the voices subsided, we started stripping away the medications. I wanted to feel like I look in this photo. I wanted a happy husband on my shoulder and a curious, calm boy on my lap. I didn't know how I would have to fight for that feeling. I didn't know I was an addict. I didn't know that anxiety would run me for a full year to come. Still, we planted seeds daily of health, and then, without knowing the outcome, faced the anxiety of withdrawal and the panic of unsatisfied addiction. And I fought. And when I was done fighting and begging to go back to the hospital and back to medications, my Dana and my dad fought for me, and my girl insisted that I listen to them. Life was out of focus. There were good days, and then there were really bad days, anxious mornings, trying to find my balance. I felt very alone, but somehow still calmer than I'd ever been before. Months 3, 4, and 5 came and brought waves of clarity with them. And with clarity came the new ability to see my little boy. He was hurt. I became his mom for the first time, and hand in hand we took on the world together. My girl in the back brain was happy. When 1 year had passed, James could read, because he's brilliant, and I was learning to read again. James could tell time, and I was learning to tell time again. We learned to laugh together. We learned to make eye contact without fear. There were so many seeds to nurture, so much to learn. There was so much work to do. I was overwhelmed sometimes, weeding out broken patterns and strange habits that I developed in the illness. It was hard to see how strange I acted, and knowing I had yet another thing to figure out. It was hard work, and my girl stayed quiet when I was working. 18 months into my recovery, I stood on a dock in Big Arm, Montana, and felt it, like a rush of calm and joy through my whole body. I finally knew that I would be well and whole. I felt it. Recovery comes in waves when you're ready for it. I said I was sorry, and I meant it. I still felt pain, and it was okay to realize that sometimes real life hurts. I relived the past on paper, and I learned to tell the truth about where I had been so that I could let it go. 4 years into recovery, I discovered that I would be a mother again, and I knew it was time. I chose to give up my last coping habit and said goodbye to my girl in the back brain. I chose to live my life in full color. I decided to feel everything. I found my new identity. I am Autumn, I am not bipolar. I started to live again. I learned to cope with stress, and I had to fight for the right just to be. I was blessed with 3 daughters. I became a strength to my family and the woman my husband so desperately needed me to be. We took the time to breathe and to heal together. I learned that life can be beautiful. I learned that broken hearts will heal. And it is never, never too late. There is a future for everyone.